Hey, Swashbucklers. Today's show is sponsored by Southern Yellow Pine Publishing, home of S.R. Staley's Pirate of Panther Bay book series. It's about a slave girl named Isabella who escapes and becomes a pirate captain, and it's super exciting, super action-packed. Check it out at underthecrossbones.com/panther to get both the books in the series, and if you want to hear an interview with the author, check out episode 20 of this show. All right, let's do it. Raise the sails. Turn it up, Swashbucklers. You're listening to Under the Crossbones, episode number 29. My name is Phil Johnson. I'm your host for the show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in week after week. I definitely appreciate it. So, 29th episode. There's 29 days in February this month. It's a leap year. Yeah. I don't know if you know this. There's an old folk tradition that on leap day, women are supposed to propose marriage to men. Opposite-y day, right? Thing. So, and if the man declines, he has to give her money or buy her a dress. That's the tradition. That's what it is. So there you go. That's it, ladies. February 29th, free gift day. That's what you can call it, right? And then possibly new boyfriend day or something after that one goes, marriage? No! So I'm coming to you from Edmonton, Canada this week. I'm up in Alberta. Can't even talk. I'm up in Alberta. I've yet to make an A joke anywhere in this town. I'm very proud of myself for doing that. The Canadians are very cool. They've been great. The shows at the Comedy Factory have been super fun. And, I guess I should tell you, my guest on the show today is Mark Kehoe, also known as Mark Mission Kehoe, and he is an expert in pirate surgery. Yeah, it's one of those things where I never thought I'd find an expert in that particular tiny little niche, but there it is. Today is a niche show, and he's got a ton of information. He debunks a lot of myths about what happened in the medical field on a pirate ship. It's really super interesting. His website, piratesurgeon.com, is a rabbit hole that you can spend months in. You may lose your job and your family if you go to this website because you may never get out. But it's a great site and you should check it out. Mark's a really interesting interview. I think you're going to dig it a lot. It's not gory. There's a little gore, but this is not an interview that's going to turn your stomach. I guarantee it. So keep on listening. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Canada has been great. Comedy shows, the shows at the Comedy Factory have been really fun. It's interesting. I came here and I thought, oh, cool. I'm going to be able to escape American politics for a week. Yeah, I don't have to listen to any Trump, any Hillary, any Bernie, nothing, Ted Cruz. I don't have to listen to any of it. Awesome. And I got here, and I got to the airport in Edmonton, and they were talking about the Republican debate on TV. So I've found that Canada pays way more attention to our politics than we pay to theirs. For instance, they just had an election here. My American friend listener, did you know that? Yeah, me neither. Yeah, we don't pay attention at all, but they pay attention to what we're doing. They pay attention to our election. They pay attention to our history. I have a joke in my show about Pearl Harbor that I have not had to explain once, like I often have to do with American audiences. American audiences actually had to come up with a funny explanation because they didn't get it. Here, they get it. I don't have to explain it. It's really kind of interesting like that. So they know much more about us. And I think, here's what I think. I think when you walk into a room, there's a lot of people in that room, and there's one dude standing off in the corner. It's kind of got crazy eyes. Looks like he might flip out any second. You watch that guy pretty carefully, right? You watch him just to make sure, see something, say something. And I think that's what the rest of the world does with us Americans. At least Canada. That's what Canada's doing. They're watching the crazy-eyed American in the corner. But it's been interesting. I've not seen a lot of Edmonton yet. I've seen about 8 square blocks because I don't have a car, which is a drag. Usually I have a rental car. On this one, they were like, no, we're going to ferry you around to the gigs. I'm being chauffeured by, the local comics here and the promoter and things like that, which is cool, except for I don't get to really see anything. Ooh, can you hear that? Yeah, behind my hotel, there's train tracks because I'm staying in the best of places. And there's trains going by all night. So that's been fantastic too. But yeah, I don't have a car, so I haven't been able to see all that much. And I have not experienced necessarily Canadian culture as it would be. I was excited to eat Canadian food, for instance, like poutine and things like that. The problem is right here around my hotel with the train tracks right behind it, around my hotel is nothing but American chains. There's Burger King, there's A&W, there's Olive Garden, which no. There's a Red Lobster, which double no. And yeah, that's what I've got. So when I got here, I went to a Burger King. Not because I'm some wussy American that only likes American food. It's because that was the closest place I could walk to, and it's freezing here. They had poutine at the Burger King, and I was smart enough not to get it there. So I've not had poutine yet. I had some chocolate bars, some Canadian chocolate bars that were recommended to me, so that was kind of cool. And yeah, so I was excited to come up here because the dollar's really strong against the Canadian dollar, right? I was like, oh yeah, my money's worth like 25% more up here, except for everything is 25% more expensive up here as well. So it's totally a wash and makes no difference. It was that Burger King meal, Whopper, fries, drink, $10. $10. Yes. I was like, wow, okay. And then I saw a dollar store, and I was like, oh, yes, dollar store. That'll be the 75-cent store for me, right? American, yes. Walked in, and the sign said, everything $1.25 or less. Okay, a $2 store? Really? It's called the dollar store. It's not called the $1.25 store. But that's what it is here in Canada. It's the $1.25 store. Getting used to kilometers and Celsius and things like that, which is weird. I have a joke in which I use the word miles in the American sense, in our weird imperial measurement system, and I say, 30, 40 miles. And I tried, the first couple nights, I tried saying kilometers, and I just felt like a poser because I felt like the audience looked at me and went, he doesn't know what a kilometer is. So I went back to miles and then explaining why I was saying miles instead of kilometers. Man, that train is super loud right now. Fantastic. So it'll be a little noisy, but you understand. So I've been here in Canada. I actually have a couple off nights from shows here, and so I've been just cranking out the writing. And I don't know if I don't remember if I told you this or not, but since last October, I have been in the midst of doing a first draft of a novel. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to sustain a story for 80,000 words. Didn't know if I'd have enough ideas to keep it going. And yesterday, I did it, 80,000 words. I was so happy with myself. It's a first draft. Now I got to go through and edit it, and 90% of it's going to get thrown away, and then I got to fix all the crappy parts and things like that. But I was really happy to be able to crank out 80,000 words in 4 months. So more about that coming. It's not a pirate novel. It's a mafia comic novel. It's a funny mafia novel. It'll be fun. You'll dig it. I'll tell you about it later. And so last night, after that, I had a celebratory candy bar after I knocked out the last 1,000 words of that. And then I sat back to watch the Bang Tango documentary. You may have never heard of the band Bang Tango. Most people never have. They were a late 80s band that came out of L.A., and their first two albums sit around. They get regular rotation in my music collection. And a guy spent the last 4 years doing a documentary about Bang Tango. And you would think, why would a guy do a documentary about a band that most people have never heard of? And that's kind of the point of it. They had a flash in the pan. They had a big single. They had a couple good albums, and then they fell apart for a variety of reasons. Part of it was the change of music in the 90s. Part of it was internal just conflicts. And it's a really interesting documentary that is not necessarily about that band. It's about all the bands that kind of almost get somewhere and then fall apart. And from that aspect of it, it's a really interesting way of looking at the music industry that you don't normally see in a documentary that is about somebody who's just successful, right? We look at the Johnny Cash movie or another document, Bob Marley documentary. This is about success. This one is about not success, which is an interesting, different angle on it. So if you want to check it out, it's free on YouTube. It's called Attack of Life, the Bang Tango movie, and you should definitely go take a peek at it if you have any sort of interest in seeing what the back end of the music industry looks like, because it's ugly. And it's not always fun, and it's sometimes it's fun, but it's fun for about an hour a night. So go check that out. That's on YouTube. I'll probably link it up in the show notes too. That's show notes under thecrossbones.com/029. You can check all that out. And speaking of music industry, you can get my new single for just a nickel for another week till the end of February. Good thing there's 29 days. You get one extra day to check it out. So my new single, The Legend of Miss Garcia, is available for just 5 cents. I was going to make it free, but there was no way on Bandcamp to make it free. So here's what you do. You're going to go to underthecrossbones.com/Garcia, and you're going to use the coupon code Crossbones, and you are going to get my new single, The Legend of Miss Garcia, for 5 cents, just a nickel, and that's good until February 27th. So check it out. Show's coming up February the 27th. That is this Saturday. I will be back at the Comedy Factory in Edmonton here in Canada for 2 more shows, a couple other things during the week, but I really don't know what they are. I go and tell jokes where I'm told. March 2nd, I will be at the Clayton Valley Bowl in Concord, California. That is my birthday show. It's a fun gig. I know, weird bowling alley, but it's an actually really fun gig. March 4th, I will be at the Variety Theater in San Francisco, California. And then the rest of March, let's see, I'm doing 3 nights in St. Louis. I'll be all over Iowa. And then I will be back in Canada in Vancouver at headlining Laugh Lines in Vancouver. So the way you can find out all my tour dates is go to underthecrossbones.com and click the tour date. Click the tour dates button. That shouldn't be hard to say. Why is that hard to say? I apparently have not had enough caffeine today, and my mouth is stepping on itself. Hope you're digging the show. Here's how you support the show. Real easy. Go to underthecrossbones.com/support. If you like what we're doing, you can drop a donation in the PayPal box. You could click on the Amazon banner and buy yourself something nice. I get a little commission on that. If you want to sponsor the show, sponsorships are super cheap right now and very effective. A lot of people digging on the sponsors, so thank you for clicking through if you're clicking through. But if you want to be a sponsor of the show, if you have a pirate theme, something or other you would like my audience to know about, you can also hit this, the support page under thecrossbone.com/sponsor for details. All right, let's do this, my friends. We are going to get into some pirate surgery with Mark Mission Kehoe. Check it out. So you have a very specific pirate thing that you do. You are the expert on pirate surgery. So tell me a little bit about why. Why would you choose that as a focus for your work?
Well, that's a good question, but I mean, to really answer it, I have to go backwards a few steps and explain how I got into it at all.
Let's do that.
Okay, so I started out on the internet. I went to this site called piratesinfo.com, which is actually still around. Forums are really big. This is back in 2002. And I got involved with that because I was interested in pirates. I've always been. And I was doing research on it. I thought, well, that's cool. And that eventually led me to piracy.com, which is a reenactor-specific website.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't really into reenacting myself. I didn't know anything about it. But I had a friend from the other site. His name's Ed Fox, and he's the only person I know who has his doctorate in pirate history.
Sounds like I need to talk to him, too.
Yeah, he would be a really interesting person to talk to, but he's very into, having everything be accurate clothing, and he does reenactments and so forth. But anyway, he said, hey, come over to this site, because I was getting ready to leave the other site. I was kind of frustrated with some things there. And come over to piracy.com. And I hung around there for a couple of years, and then I was turning 40. And this is where the story gets kind of bizarre. When I turned 40, I always thought as a kid that I was going to die at 40. Actually, what had happened is I'm a diabetic. I've been a diabetic since I was 3. And the doctor who I had as a specialist in diabetes told me, well, he'll probably live to be at least 25.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to live really long. I'm going to live to be 40. So I set my own limit there, and I thought, okay, in 2007, I'm going to turn 40. I need to do something really different.
Uh-huh.
And I've been hanging around this site with all these reenactors. I thought, that's what I'm going to do. But I got to find something that aligns with me. And I'm an engineer. I like technical things. And I also like things that are a little bit different. I didn't want to do the same impression everybody else was doing in reenacting. So I said, I'm going to be a pirate surgeon. And I gave myself a year, because I had a year before I was going to turn 40. I actually decided this all on my 39th birthday. And I said, I'm going to look into this stuff for a year and make up my character. So that's how I got into it. Kind of a long way to get there. But it just was interesting to me because there was nobody doing it to the level that I wanted to do. When I do something, I do it. I don't just say, well, I'm going to be a surgeon, buy a couple things, and bloody up my clothes and say, hey, I'm a surgeon. No, I got to go, and I got to find out all the details, as much as I can find out. And it turns out this is this huge, huge subject. And when I first started getting into it, I thought, I don't know anything about this. I can't find much about it. Somebody had said, hey, go check out this book. It was called Rough Medicine.
Okay.
By Joan Druitt, and I got the book, and it was about whaling. Like, this isn't pirates. This is 19th century. Pirates are 17th, 18th century. So I started doing research, and you just go down the rabbit hole,
Sure,
They're
yeah.
finding book upon book upon book, and there's all these books out there from this period that talk about surgery because it was an important position, and I just got fascinated, and I started writing, and I haven't stopped yet. I just keep writing. That was about 2007, by the way, so I've really been writing serious articles since 2009.
Okay, and your site is immense. You sent me a few of the quick kind of overview links, which I went over yesterday, and there's so much there. It's just amazing. I mentioned to my mother this morning. I said I'm interviewing a guy who's an expert in pirate surgery today, and she's like, "That's a thing?" She was like, "There's enough to talk
Only
about
for
there."
me. Nobody else seems to notice.
Yeah, and it's so great. So first of all, congratulations on making it past 40. I think that's
yeah. Well, now we're looking at 50, so it's like, well, we blew that away.
Well, that's good though. You gotta, and I think that must give you a sense of, well, I better do what I want to do now because I might not get a chance to later.
Yeah, right. And that was exactly it. I thought I got to go out and do something that I would never otherwise have done because in and of myself, I am not the type of person to put on, costumes, and I don't even consider them costumes anymore. But at the time, I thought of them as costumes, and go out there and try to impress everybody that I was a pirate surgeon and actually knew about all this really intricate stuff. But I did it, and like you say, I just wanted to go out there and do something different.
Right, and so maybe you can enlighten the rest of us a little bit on this, because I think when most people think of or when pirate fans think of surgeons, they go, okay, he was an important guy on the ship. He was possibly conscripted against his will and probably didn't have a whole lot of modern technique. And I think that's where most people's thought of a pirate surgeon pretty much ends. So what would we not expect in the skill level of some of those guys?
Well, actually, a lot of what you hear is that these guys were horrible butchers. And you hear, they're the Sawbones,
right?
And by the way, the term Sawbones didn't come around until the 19th century, so they were never the Sawbones. But in fact, they had these whole elaborate procedures for everything. And if you looked at my website, you'll find a lot of that. I go into it in detail for each operation, and I mean, they had all these things set up. Granted, by today's standards, we look at it and say, wow, medicine was really primitive. They didn't have any of the modern pharmaceuticals and so forth. But they had other things that seemed to work, at least as near as I can tell they seemed to work, or at least they told themselves that they worked. So, and I mean, you go down any particular kind of illness that they faced, they talked about it. They had procedures. They had discussions about what's going to work best, step by step, although the way they write it doesn't read like step by step, which is where I kind of come in and say, okay, I'm going to take this stuff and make it step by step.
I see.
But
okay.
I mean, most people tend to think. I had a TV show. People from a TV show call me, and they only wanted to know about two things. They wanted to know about amputation and head surgery. They called it brain surgery. It's actually called trepanning, which is drilling holes in the skull.
Oh, okay.
And that's all they knew about it. I was like, no, these guys had so much more going on behind them. And that was what fascinated me. The more I got into the research, the more you find out, oh, yeah, what about burns? What about insect bites? What about all of these fevers and catastrophic things that could happen to a person? Splinters. Splinters were a huge thing. They were a big problem. People were killed by splinters. I mean, you find it all over the place in the accounts. And it's just like, there's so much stuff there that I found it fascinating. And then you start acquiring the tools, and like say, being an engineer, I love to get hold of the tools, and I started amassing a collection, and pretty soon everybody was going, wow, I've never seen a collection like this. I'm like, hang around eBay for a while, you'll start finding stuff.
That's interesting. Now, the splinters, was it infection that was causing deaths from splinters?
Yeah, well, that's what it usually came down to with medicine, was infection. And that was the big problem with, they called the really horrific high casualty operations capital operations. And that included amputation and trepanning. But yeah, it was usually because they couldn't really combat the infection afterwards. So sepsis would set in and people would be killed off by that.
I see.
But not as many as you'd think. I mean, most people think, you got a splinter and your finger became infected and then you died from gangrene. It's like, yeah, that didn't usually happen. Probably. I have heard an estimate, and I don't know how accurate this is because I haven't really been able to trace it down. But I've heard like 50% of the people in some of these major operations survived.
Oh.
And again, I don't know if that's exactly accurate. One thing I would love to do, they had the big lotto recently with the billions of dollars or whatever. And I thought if I won that, I would go over to England because they have journals from surgeons from around this time period. They were naval surgeons. And I would comb through all of that data, just make it my business to find out how many people died of what and how many things they treated and how many people survived. And I'd publish this big research paper.
Oh, interesting. Boy, you know how to have a good time with your money, man.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it exciting? I'm going to go to London and spend all my time in a library. It's going to be awesome.
That really, it makes me think back to my childhood when I'd have a splinter in my finger. My mother go, "Oh, you're not going to die." And I go, now I would know. Now I go, but I could.
Well, it's possible, but not very likely.
Yeah. They didn't have Bactine back then, I guess.
No, well, no. They did have things, though. They had medicines, but no, not like we do today. Sepsis was a big problem. Preventing infection was a real huge issue. And, I mean, surgery was like that all the way up through and even past the Civil War.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't until really the late 19th, early 20th century that we started being able to really combat some of these problems. So, which is great because once you learn about these tools, you find they actually travel from era to era. I could probably do Civil War with a couple modifications and still be doing good surgery.
Oh, there you
just changed that much.
Yeah, you just need a different hat, I guess. And So before we get away from the things you don't want to talk about, the trepanning, did you see when they did that to John Malkovich in the Crossbones TV show?
They actually asked me to write them up something for that, and I didn't do it. But,
okay.
I did not see it. I have not seen that show.
Oh, okay. I was curious if it was accurate at all.
My bet is it isn't because they asked me to write them. Somebody told me they just went and they used the tool. It's funny because they contacted me and they wanted to know where do we get these tools, and I told them, and then they said, "Well, can you write us up some things for the show?" And so I did, and nothing really much ever came of it. The problem I found with working with TV people, and I've seen this time and again, they want things tomorrow. They don't know they want it, and then they want it tomorrow. It's like, every page on my web page that has information about surgery, I figured it out once. It takes about 20 hours for me to put together each page.
Wow.
On an average page. And that's because, there's research, and then there's gathering, then there's writing, and a huge part of it is just finding pictures.
Oh, I'm sure,
You got to find copyright-free pictures. And so it's like, I can't give you an article in one day. It's just not possible. So I had heard they just took the tool and started drilling.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
I just wrote the article on head surgery these past 2 months. I worked on it in December and finished it in January. And it's a very involved process. I'd say go read it, but I don't know what your stomach is for this kind of stuff.
Well,
there was a whole process to it. You couldn't just do that. You would, first of all, the teeth would get all fouled with skin and hair. I mean, you shave the head, you cut the head, then you looked for the fracture, and then you had to figure out where to put it. And, you start getting really involved. It's not, they knew this stuff. It's not just a simple process. They knew how to do this, and they'd been talking about it and practicing it since the time of Hippocrates. That's 400 years BC. So there's a lot they did know. And what's funny is I'll be doing my presentation, and we'll get modern doctors and nurses, particularly nurses, come up and say, we still do a lot of that stuff. And I say, yeah, I know. It's not that different. Frightening, isn't it? Yeah,
it definitely is. Yeah, and the scene in the TV show was cringe-inducing, and that's probably all they needed to get out of it anyway.
Right, but they also did an amputation, which I did help them on a little bit. So.
Oh, did you? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I gave them some information for that. Well, what they ended up doing was the same thing. They asked me for an article, and by the time I had it put together, they'd already filmed the scene because it takes me that long. But in the meantime, they had gone to my webpage and used what I wrote about amputation. And he told me, he said, yeah, it turned out to be just what we needed.
Oh, well, that's good.
So his actor read my webpage, and they went ahead and did it.
Oh, that's great. So when you do presentations, who do you present to? What kind of speaking do you do?
Well, my presentations are very casual. We do it at reenactments, and basically I set all my instruments. Well, I set out about 2/3 of my instruments because I've gotten so many that I know that a bunch of them aren't completely accurate, and I start weeding them out.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I set them up on a table, and people come up to the table walking through our encampment because the group I work with, which is the Mercury Crew, does period accurate. So we don't do the bucket boots and, all the fancy Hollywood stuff. We try to do history-focused things. And I just have people come up to the table, and usually I tell them a little bit about pirate surgeons and what it was like back then. And I say, ask me about any instrument on this table. I'll be glad to explain it to you. And I like that because everything on the table sounds horrible when you start explaining it. It's just funny to watch people's faces when you start explaining. Some people are fascinated, and they go, I got to bring my friend back here so she can hear all about this. I'm like, yeah, I bet she will really love this.
Yeah, right. So I want to ask you about the research that you've done, because you said when you first started digging into it, there just wasn't that much that you could find out there. And I imagine that outside of your website, there's probably not a lot of it on the internet either. So how did you dig into finding some of those old books and such?
Well, first of all, there is a lot of it out there now, and we have Google Books to thank for that.
Okay.
I have frequently put on my Facebook, the Facebook version of my Pirate Surgeon site, when I come across one of these books, I put the book link out there for people who want to look into it. Mm-hmm. But when I very first started out, I had I had one book. I had Rough Medicine by Joan Druitt. That's why I remember it so well. Uh-huh. And I thought I need to get a hold, everybody wants to get a hold who's into this, of John Woodall's book, which is called The Surgeon's Mate.
Okay.
It was written in 1617, the first edition, and then he subsequently released some more versions of it. But I wanted to get it, and I couldn't figure out how, and I finally ended up going to Michigan State University here because they have a public land grant, and they have to give the public access to the records. Mm. And if you go to a university, you can get access to a lot of material that has been digitized. Okay. So I went to Michigan State, got John Woodall's book, got a couple other books that I had since read about, and through interlibrary loan, I found modern books that actually did talk about books from the past and started basically making a list. I have a list in Word that I just keep. Anytime I see a book that sounds interesting, I put it on there, and then the next time I can make it out to the library, I go get it. Because Michigan State, unfortunately, is about a 2-hour drive from me. So I don't get out there too often, but I have so many books now, and I have many of the key books I know I need. So it's not that big an issue as it was when I first started. But yeah, I made a lot of trips to begin with so I could go get them. But now, like I say, Google Books is putting them out there. So it's great. I mean, lots of people have access to that if they want it. Uh-huh. But then the next trick is understanding it because they wrote in a style very different than ours. And that's why I like to put exact quotes on my website.
Right. And I saw your, you showed me the one, the how to write in that period style article.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, which is very funny. Yeah, a lot of that stuff is so difficult to read because it just seems like spelling was whatever you felt like it was that day.
Exactly.
And so I guess we can't complain about text messaging now because it's not that much different.
No.
Yeah. No. So what have you discovered along the way that you found surprising that you didn't expect to find?
Oh, gosh. So many things. I mean, I expected it to be like I told you most people expect it to be. They expect it to be really horrible, grisly, do it as you can do, whatever you can do. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of procedure, not a lot of forethought, but it wasn't like that at all. And the other neat thing is when you come across, I can't tell you how many times I'm writing about something, an instrument or something, and I find a completely different use for it. And that may not sound like much to you, but I'm just fascinated. They would say, you think you know how something works, and then you start reading about it, like, wow, I didn't understand that at all. Uh-huh. There's so much more to it. I found this little instrument, I believe it's called a stitching quill, that they use to poke the needle through the skin, and it's really kind of neat when you look at it. And I've only found it because somebody said, well, how do they do suturing? Everybody wants to know what do they use for suturing.
Right.
And so I wrote a whole article on it. And in the process, I found out, wow, this stitching quill is cool. And now I'm looking for a blacksmith to make me one so I can put it on the table and people can ask me. Because, again, when you explain it, it sounds horrible.
Right.
It's really kind of cool.
How many of the tools that you have you had custom made for yourself versus, actual period artifacts that you've been able to get your hands on?
Okay, to begin with, in all honesty, I do not have I probably have 2 or 3 instruments that would be technically period correct.
Okay.
I define the period as 1690 to 1725.
Uh-huh.
The problem being you're going to pay a load of money to get something
Sure.
like that in most cases. So I have a bunch of reproduction stuff that I got, and that probably makes up reproduction items probably make up about half my collection.
Okay.
Because that's the most reasonably priced stuff. And people will tell you who are interested in this stuff that they think that's expensive. Like, you think that's expensive, go out and try and buy the real stuff. And then I've got some that people have made for me. It probably makes up a third of my collection. And then whatever's left over are things that I've managed to kind of put together myself.
I see.
Based on using other instruments that would work in this case. But yeah, as I get more and more into it, I can't even find things to buy anymore. The stuff I get off of eBay it's dried up too, because I look on eBay and everybody's got the same instruments out there. It's very rare you come across something really interesting. Because again, you go back to most people want an amputation saw, or they want a trepanning drill. They want the same stuff.
Right.
Once you've got those things, it's like, well, okay, I don't want to buy any more of these because they're expensive.
Yeah, I imagine. And I suppose the real thing is probably awfully hard to come by. Do you follow the wreck divers and stuff that are out there to see if they're coming up with anything like that?
I do occasionally. It's funny. I met a guy in Key West. There used to be an event in Key West called Pirates in Paradise, and then it changed to Fort Taylor Pirate Invasion. I met a guy down there who was actually with the museum down there, and he publishes papers regularly on stuff that they find in shipwrecks, because they're shipwreck divers. I can't think of the name of they're the people who got the Etosha, went after the Etosha.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I do sometimes read that stuff if I come across it, or if I'm researching a topic. A lot of times I'll be researching a topic, and I can't find any information about a tool, and I'll start trying different spellings, and all of a sudden I wind up on a diver site. They found one, and they explain a little bit. I've actually found information on a diver site that I haven't found elsewhere, which is kind of nice.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. But I don't follow it real close.
Yeah.
Because, I just look for information. I'm so focused on whatever I'm researching. Like, right now I'm researching, I guess you'd call it healthcare for pirates.
Okay.
And then that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for anything to do with that, about, the healthcare policies they had. You'd be surprised. You'd probably sit there going, what healthcare policies? They had a bunch of things in place. You'd be amazed.
Yeah, I think it's at least among pirate fans, it's fairly common knowledge that they would be at least reimbursed for missing limbs and things like that.
But did you know that they were doing that in the British Navy 100 years beforehand?
No, I actually didn't.
See, you don't ever find this stuff out till you start looking.
Yeah.
The British Navy was giving cash remuneration to people who lost a limb, who lost, an eye or something like that. So the pirates got it from the British Navy.
Okay.
And most people don't know that. And that's the kind of stuff I like to write about.
Sure, that's interesting. Did a healthcare program go beyond that on a pirate ship? Beyond just you lost an arm, here's some money?
Part of what I consider the healthcare program, and I'm making air quotes here, includes the fact that they would supply a surgeon. And in the case of the pirates, they would actually abduct a surgeon, because most surgeons didn't really have a lot of interest in working for the pirates. It didn't benefit them much.
Sure.
But they would abduct a surgeon and force him to be their surgeon. So that was probably the best form of healthcare they could have, because otherwise, if you were wounded, who did the work on you? Sometimes men did it on themselves, but usually that fell to the captain.
Right.
And you can imagine how much knowledge the captain had. If he was lucky, he had a book on surgery, and believe me, those things are not step-by-step procedurals. Like I said, they kind of wander all over the place. So I imagine a captain would be really frustrated trying to do surgery on one of his men. So having a surgeon is probably the biggest healthcare thing they did for them.
Okay. Have you run across any surgeons that were not conscripted that actually did go out willingly to do that?
There were a couple, and we're kind of limited as to what we know about day-to-day life on a lot of pirate ships.
Sure.
But there were 2, in particular. One was named George Wilson, and another was named Peter Scudamore. And they were both captured by Bartholomew Roberts. So they weren't captured. They actually went willingly and became his surgeons. So there are at least those two, and I've got a whole page on each of them on my website because there's so much information that come out during the trial of Robert's men that it talks about what kind of men these were. And basically they weren't very good surgeons from what I could tell. I guess that's what you get when you get a willing surgeon.
I'll come. Maybe not. Maybe you stay here. That's really funny, actually. And there are reasons why even skilled conscripted men would volunteer for duty like that. I don't know. I don't know if you've read The Invisible Hook by Peter Leeson. You probably have.
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's actually a book about pirate economics, and I'm hoping to get Peter on the show pretty soon. But he talks a lot in that book about why even skilled men would volunteer for a pirate crew, because basically it kept them from getting killed, and there was some other benefits to it as well. But yeah, really great book if you haven't read that one. Let's talk about the reenacting a little bit, because I know you've gotten into that fairly heavily. What is the appeal of reenacting to you?
The appeal is to get the information out there for me and get actually people back to my website. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I hope for. I actually have found, though, that it doesn't work out that way. Most people take my little website cards, and based on the traffic I see, I don't think they actually go to the website. But, it's kind of fun to go out there and talk to people, too, and educate. You never know who you're going to touch when you're doing something like that, and that's kind of cool to
Sure.
go out there. And it's just like I was out there doing a presentation, and this little boy came up, and he asked me about a couple instruments, and then he wandered off, and I thought, okay, that's pretty typical. Most kids ask you about 4 or 5 instruments, and they walk away. That's enough for them. Came back near the end of the day, and then proceeded to ask me about every single instrument on the table, including the ones he'd already asked about. And his mom had come with him, because he was a little boy. He must have been about 7. And she said, he's been talking about this ever since he saw you, and we just had to bring him back so he could ask you about more.
Wow.
And, maybe that kid will go off and be a surgeon. I don't know. It would be very cool if he did, or maybe he won't. Maybe he'll just have an interest in pirates. I don't know. But, you always kind of touch people when you do that stuff. So I think that's really neat. Plus, it's always just fun to go out and do reenactments and hang around with people who are into the same hobby you are. Sure.
And I like that you have a purpose in doing that. I think that's cool, rather than just, going out and playing pretend because it's fun. I think that's really great. And yeah, that kid will either be a surgeon or a serial killer, one of the two.
Right.
That's great. So you are known for a particular hat. Tell me the story of the hat.
Oh, the Patrick Hand Original Planner's hat.
Yeah.
You're out in California, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Patrick Hand lives out in California, and he designs, at least he used to design, mascots, like the mascot costumes that you see at football games and so forth. So Patrick is an extremely creative person, and love Patrick. I was so happy to meet him. But anyway, Patrick had this hat that he designed, and he made it for himself because he said he was getting really hot out in the sun at all those California events. And it's got a huge wide brim on it. And the minute I saw him wearing that, I thought, I've got to get a hat like that so I can wear it to reenactments. Because it's a really neat looking hat, and I don't see anybody else wearing it. So I asked Patrick if he would make me one too, and he said he would. And as the event got closer, I wasn't seeing a hat. So I started to get worried. And so I said, Patrick, is this okay? Are you going to have this for me? Should I buy a different hat? And he said, oh, no, I'll have something. And finally I went out and bought a tricorn, which, by the way, I've since found is probably not entirely accurate for the period, which I know will shock a lot of people.
Oh, interesting.
But Patrick did show up. He brought his own hat that he had made for himself. He said, well, I'm probably done with this. You can have this one. So I got this hat called the Patrick Hand hat. It was a planner's hat. And I write these journals, as you saw. I really haven't written any recently, but I used to write these sort of tongue-in-cheek, humorous journals about the events, and I always referred to it as the Patrick Hand Original Trademark Planner's Hat, because I just think that's funny. So every time I referred to it that way, and I kind of became identified with this hat, because it's this big, ridiculous-looking hat. It's sort of Sort of reminds you of the Quaker Oats guy, except it's brown. And I've been called the Quaker Oats man, by the way, just for the record. So not sure that's something I should be bragging about, but there you go. And I got known for the hat, and it got wound up in these things we call hat swap games. There's another guy who owned the piracy pub site, Stinky Tudor, and he started doing these hat swap games. And basically, you just take somebody's hat and you put it on, and then you put your hat on them, and people start trading them around. He did that because he thought it was funny that people were so identified with their hats, and some people would freak out about losing their hats, including yours truly to a degree, because it's my hat. So that's how I got associated with it. A story that wasn't in there. I know you were looking at my webpage, and I didn't. This happened after I wrote that article. Somebody stole the Patrick Hand hat.
Oh.
And it was in Put-in-Bay, which is a little island in Ohio, very much like Key West. And somebody actually walked off. I took the hat off so I could take a picture or something or talk to somebody, and I turned around and it was gone. And my friends, all my pirate friends, God bless them, went out and they searched. There's just rows and rows of bars in Put-in-Bay, and they went through every bar looking for the hat. And a girl actually, finally found it. Her name's Jessica. And she walked in and she cursed these guys out and said, "How dare you take somebody else's property?" She said, then I grabbed it and I ran because I knew they were much bigger than me. If they caught me, they were going to kill me. So the Patrick Hand hat was stolen and retrieved in Put-in-Bay, Ohio.
That's funny. Well, I'm glad you got it back because, I'm big on visual branding in my own work and stuff like that too. I wear this ridiculous red shiny shirt on stage, and it helps to have iconography to go along with your project.
You're talking about your comedy?
Yeah. And people. When I walk in the club, people know who's going to be on stage because you can't miss me. It looks ridiculous.
You can't miss the shirt, the red shiny shirt.
That's right. But that's really cool. So I imagine that makes you a little more memorable among the reenactors. Yeah,
it does. Well, the thing is, it's like I say, it's kind of a ridiculous hat, and I know it's a ridiculous hat. That's what I like about it. It's unique. It's different. So you either have to get it and kind of hide it so people don't make fun of you, or you have to go out there and just be all over the place. Like, this is me, this is my hat, love or leave it, Mission the surgeon, he's got a hat like this.
Right. You know? Oh, that brings up a good point. Why the name Mission? That's interesting to me.
Oh, really? I don't know that I've ever explained that, like, on my website, but Mission is actually a misspelling.
Okay.
When I first got interested in pirates, I had just thought the story of the pirate Misson, which is in the General History, the book that was from the period, I thought he was fascinating. And it's about this pirate who establishes this community called Libertalia, and they try to set up this idealistic society, and I just thought it was really cool. So I said, Misson, that's cool. But I misspelled it. And my username when I first started getting on forums was Mission. I added the I in there, and I became Mission. And then as time went on, people said, well, you need a first name. And I didn't really know why I needed a first name, but they said, you got to have one. Well, Misson was a Frenchman, according to the story, which, by the way, turns out is fictional. It's not a real story. They have proven that most of the things in there's no proof for them.
Sure, yeah.
So I was kind of disappointed. Here I'm trying to do period accurate, and I picked a fictional pirate. But what are you going to do? And the names have stuck with me. So I started looking for a first name, and I looked in the French, what does this name mean? Got one online and said, I'm looking for something with healer in it. And I chose Raphael because it means healer from God.
Okay.
You got to remember, we're going back to the 17th century. So that's the kind of stuff you get. So I thought, that's perfect. So I'm Raphael Mission.
Nice.
Although nobody calls me Raphael. They always just call me Mission.
Okay.
Which I'm cool with. So I don't know why I had to find a first name, but I did find one, and those who need it can take advantage of that and use it.
There you go. That's great. So how often do you put out the articles on your website? Is that a monthly thing?
It is a monthly thing, and I make sure to get them out on the 20th, do or die.
Okay.
So the 20th of every month, there's a new article. The reason I do that is because if you don't have a deadline for something, I mean, you get so lost in this research.
Sure.
So it's like I say, all right, I got about a week and a half to do preliminary stuff, gathering the material, because I have this Word document that's now it's probably about 2,000 pages now of information from books that I copied in. But I've since found, with Google Books, you can actually go and search the books, and you can specify the dates you want to search and everything else, and you almost don't need it anymore to have it in your own form. But I have that, so I start with that, and then I go out there and look, see if I can find things that are related. And then I spend 2.5, 3 weeks writing and finding pictures and fixing pictures. All the pictures out there, a lot of the period pictures they're kind of crappy. So I end up going in and trying to doc. And I'll tell you, the pure historians will say you should never do that. But it's like, you know what? I want to make this a pleasing experience for the audience. I'm not doctoring them to change what's in them. I'm doctoring them to clean up all the snow and the garbage that's in them. So there's the fold lines that show up,
Yeah.
They weren't there originally, so I can take them out.
Right. So what do you have coming up in your writing schedule that you're really excited to write about? Which topics?
Well, like I say, the next one's going to be on pirate healthcare, I guess. I don't know what else to call it. And that's I focus on them one at a time. I really don't pick the topics anymore in advance. I mean, I've got a list of topics I want to research. Like one of them is sweating. Doesn't that sound like a fascinating
Sweating? Okay.
Sweating. The reason for that is what they believed in humor theory, and they thought the body had these humors, which are basically fluids in it. And if you were sick, your humors were out of balance, so they had to purge the bad humors out. And they're fluids, so if you get somebody to sweat, the idea here is that it's pushing the bad humors out through your pores.
Oh, I see.
That's why they did bloodletting, too. That's the same basic theory. Because you probably heard they let blood, right?
Sure,
That was popular all the way through Civil War also.
Right.
And it was to get the bad blood out of your system, basically. So
until they figured out that wasn't a good idea. Yeah.
It's funny because the next article was chosen by my editor. I have a girl who, God bless her, she edits all my material. Yeah, and she doesn't have a real strong stomach, so this last one was really rough on her because it was about tree panning, and she didn't really much care for tree panning. So I said, all right, you get to pick the next topic. I've got a couple topics here. You pick one. And she happens to be an HR person, so she chose healthcare.
Oh, okay.
So that's why that's next. What else have I it's like whatever. A lot of times people will write me and ask me questions, and that leads me to, do the next article. Somebody had a really interesting thought on syphilis. Doesn't that sound like fun? Someone sitting there thinking about syphilis.
I imagine it was rampant, though.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
And I have an article out there, but I wrote it when I was first starting out, like 2009. And it's not a very good article, so I want to rewrite that. And because somebody had presented something to me that had never occurred to me, it's like, I want to write an article just so I can get that idea into my article, plus fix up the one that's there. Because I want to get all these articles out there, and then I'm going to hopefully bind them into a book.
Okay.
So I've been told by multiple people, you need to turn this into a book. Nobody else has anything like this. And I want to get it out there so, the 25 people who were looking for a book like this have something to go to.
Have you run across anything that turned your stomach?
No, I've been doing haunted house props since I was, probably since I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
This stuff fascinated me. It doesn't turn my stomach. When I was a kid, yeah. You know what I did find? It's funny. We were researching haunted house props. We were just looking for new ideas. For a while, I had a line of horror props that I was producing. And it didn't really pan out. But we were looking for, what else can we do with horror props? And I looked at this book that was just photographs of people who had died. And the first time I looked at that thing, I just could not. I mean, I had to walk away. It was just like, oh my God, the things people do to themselves or to each other.
Sure.
And then I talked to my friend who was helping me with the business, and I said, there's this book, you got to see it. Well, he was just like me the first time, but the second time I looked at it, I was totally desensitized. I'm like, well, that'll work. No, that won't work. That's too grisly. That might work. So it's funny how it is. You just kind of desensitize yourself to it, which is probably a bad thing. But yeah, no, when I read the articles, they don't even faze me anymore. It's just like, whatever. I just want to put this information out there so I can, get it out to other people, and so I have something to talk about when I do reenactments.
Sure. Sounds like maybe your first name for your character should have been Dexter. So, tell me a little bit about the haunted house props and stuff. How did you get into that?
It's funny. When I was a kid, my parents were in the JCs. I don't know if you know what the JCs are, but
sure.
They used to do haunted houses. They really don't so much anymore. And I just loved it. I mean, even as a kid, I've always liked skeletons. I don't know why. In fact, that's how I got into piracy at all. Was the old Pirates of the Caribbean models.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever seen those?
I saw them on your website, but I was not aware of them before, strangely.
Yeah, they came out in the early mid-'70s when I was just a kid, and I was just enraptured with them. I wanted every single one of them, but I didn't have any money, and I couldn't afford them. So I wound up with a couple of the really crappy ones. And so when I got older, I went on eBay and paid a ridiculous amount of money to get them. And I had a friend of mine paint them because I'm still not a very good painter. But anyway, I was fascinated by skeletons, so going in the haunted house, I liked that aspect. And when I went out there, it was just when Star Wars had come out, of all things. It was 1977. And so they were doing a cantina part, like a room for the Star Wars cantina, and they let me do that, and I was really into Star Wars, so it just kind of cemented everything for me for haunted house. And then I kind of got away from it. I did that for a couple of years, got away from it. But when I got out of college, I thought, I should go back to that. It'd be fun. And then I started getting into doing props, and it's like, what can we do? How can we make a room really interesting? How can we engineer it? So there's basically just a couple kinds of rooms, and you got to figure out how to make it work.
Sure. And completely just sort of self-taught on all that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. I don't have any. I'm not even sure the props are very good, but, as Bert said in Mary Poppins, I drew what I likes, and I likes what I drew.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. Nobody else is really that concerned. One of my favorite ones, I was really in a bad space in my life, and I'm like, I got to do something. I got to get out of this bad headspace. I'm going to make a prop, and I thought I'm going to make a life-size velociraptor.
Wow.
So
okay.
I went and I learned how to do all the things I needed for that, and I made this life-size. The whole thing's detailed on one of my websites. It's not on the pirate site, obviously, and it kind of pulled me out, and it got me going into new things, and pretty soon I was doing pirate reenacting. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, you never know where stuff will take you if you just kind of follow the muse for a little bit. Well, Mark, this has been super interesting and fun. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk. Is there so your website is piratesurgeon.com, correct?
Correct.
Great, and I'll have that listed on the show notes, and we will send some people over there. And when you hand out the cards at the reenactment thing, just keep doing that, because I hand out cards after my shows too, and like 95% of people don't look at them again, but the 5% of people do. And those are the real people you want coming to your website anyway. So
that's true. Yeah, I mean, some people are going to come in and go, this really isn't my thing. So I appreciate that insight. I will keep handing them out just because, something for people to take away too. That's
right. So piratesurgeon.com, going on the show notes. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you'd like to tell my listeners about?
No, you covered. I didn't even know what this was going to be about. That's why I was hoping I would be able to give you information you needed because you could spend weeks looking at all the stuff on my website. And it's funny, I almost wished I hadn't sent you to, I don't know if you looked at the Key West thing.
Yeah, I did.
Did you? I almost wished I hadn't sent you that when I went back and reread it, because wow, I can't believe how clunky this is compared to the later ones. Are a lot smoother, a lot funnier. But that one was literally, somebody said, what's going on down there? And I thought, okay, I'm going to explain what's going on down there to somebody who's back at home and couldn't come.
Right.
It was actually the wife of the guy he won't admit it, but he's in charge of my crew, the Mercury Crew. But if you ask him to say, no, I'm the quartermaster. We don't have a captain because nobody wants to be the captain. Even a guy named Captain Jim doesn't want to be the captain. So go figure. And his wife was asking about it, so I just started saying, well, this is what I'm seeing, kind of like Johnny on the spot. And then it got such a good response, I thought, well, I'm going to keep doing this. In fact, that was before I was writing any surgery articles. So the next year, I went to 7 reenactments, which is the most I've ever been to in a single year. And I wrote a journal for every single one of them, which doesn't sound amazing, but it takes a month to write every single one of those things.
I believe it, yeah.
it's just a lot of work. And but I mean, I got better. I began to find what was funny, and I was specifically looking for things that would be funny in the journal. I knew what to take photographs of and write about and so forth. So.
That's great. That's great. Well, yeah, you have just probably months of reading on your website, and that's a site to bookmark. I don't
recommend reading it all at once because it'll just be too much.
Yeah,
I don't like to read it all at once.
And you won't sleep or eat or no, it's fantastic. So yeah, definitely everybody go check out piratesurgeon.com. And Mark, this was great. And to be honest, I never know what these episodes are going to be about either. So it's we just kind of run with it. And I think it was really fun, man. I'm glad we got a chance to talk. Well,
thank you for contacting me, and hopefully people will enjoy it. That's why I put it out there.
I bet they will. All right, Mark, I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks. Bye. And there it is, friends. That's my interview with Mark Kehoe. You can find out all his stuff. You can check out, you can dive deep in the rabbit hole at piratesurgeon.com. Definitely go check it out and do it when you've got some time on your hands because you're not going to escape easily. It's a good one. Yeah. I'll link up to a few of the articles we mentioned specifically on the show notes. Plus, there'll be a link to The Invisible Hand by Peter Leeson on there as well. Go check all that stuff out on the show notes at underthecrossbones.com/029. And look, friends, I don't want you to be a victim of the modern pirates. There are pirates out there. They don't dress as well. They're not as fun. They don't drink rum, but they do want your identity information, and that is bad. It's bad. They're bad pirates, and they want to steal your stuff. Spotify was hacked this week. If you've got a Spotify account, probably want to go change your password. Yep, they got them too. I changed my password. So here's the thing. Here's how you avoid a lot of this stuff. You get yourself a LifeLock membership, and LifeLock goes out and they keep track of all the darkest, ugliest parts of the web and make sure that your information isn't on those lists that are being sold to bad people. And if something does happen and your name is on that list, LifeLock will help you fix it. That's the difference between that and like your freebie credit report thing that comes with your credit card and things like that. So you can get 10% off a LifeLock membership. All you have to do is go underthecrossbones.com/lifelock, click the Start Your Membership button, and you will get 10% off. Do that. It's for your safety's sake. All right. If you want a free pirate book, hey, would you like a free pirate ebook? Yes, I think you would. I have The Pirates of Panama for you, also known as The Buccaneers of America by Alexander Exquemelin. Man, I love saying that name, and it's so hard. I'm getting better at it. Alexander Exquemelin. Here's all you have to do. Go to underthecrossbones.com, click the thing that says free ebook, and you will get it. Or if you want, if you're out driving, if you're jogging, if you're out somewhere where you're not near a computer, just text the word pirate and your email address to 94253. That's pirate, the word pirate, and your email address to 94253, and it'll kick back a link to download Alexander Exquemelin's Pirates of Panama. You're going to dig it. It's a really important historical document for us piratey fans. All right, let's dig into some comedy. We got some comedy. We got some music. Comedy today, we're going to hear from San Francisco's own Justin Gomes on what it's like to get pickpocketed in San Francisco and how you can avoid it. And then we're going to hear from a Irish pirate metal band from my hometown, San Jose, California. They're called O'Craven, and we're going to hear their song called Devil's Drink. And this is, okay, pirate metal is already it's pretty niche to begin with, right? This is in like internet marketing. They have this thing called niching down or drilling deeper into your niche, right? Where like you don't just have like a mommy blog, you have a single mommy blog, and then you have a single mommy blog with 3 children blog, and then you have a single mommy with 3 children who's blonde blog, right? You niche down, you get smaller and smaller so that you can be the king or queen of your niche, right? Yeah. So that's what O'Craven has done. They are probably the #1 Irish pirate metal band anywhere outside of Ireland, because there might be one in Ireland. There's a lot of Irish people there, so it's not really a niche there, But yes, Irish pirate metal, Pirish. Can we just call them Pirish? They're Pirish metal, and I think that's how it's going to go. All right? So we're going to hear some comedy from Justin Gomes, and then we're going to hear the song Devil's Drink from O'Craven. Check it out. Here we go.
I like San Francisco. San Francisco's a fun city. Somebody tried to pickpocket me the other day, though. It was really exciting. I was in a crowd, and this dude reaches in my jacket pocket right here. He just reaches into it, which I had ingeniously put nothing in. But I didn't want this guy to think I was a trick-ass mark or anything, so what I did was I reached into my pocket and I very gently held his hand. tried to pull away, and I grabbed him real tight. Pulled him in, and I was like, hey, how you doing, huh? San Franciscans are notoriously afraid of New Yorkers. It's true.
And that is our show for today, friends. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for listening. Make sure that you're subscribed. Hit the iTunes, hit the Slacker, hit the whatever your podcatcher is, and make sure that you're subscribed. Speaking of iTunes, thanks for leaving those reviews. Keep doing that because that helps the show quite a bit. If you want to check out my guests, you can find Mark Kehoe at piratesurgeon.com. You can find comedian Justin Gomes at facebook.com/thatscarobot. I'll link to that on the show notes. And you can find O'Craven at ocraven.com. And for everything else, you can check out the show notes for this show at underthecrossbones.com/029. If you want some freebies from me, go check out philjcomedy.com. Until then, I will see you next week. Bye.